AITA for ruining my girlfriend's secret financial deal with her ex? I thought I was in a perfect relationship. She was gentle, kind, the type of person who made every day feel special. But then I discovered her secret. She'd been taking money from her ex for 2 years, controlling him, manipulating the situation, all while pretending everything was normal. When I finally exposed the truth, chaos erupted, screaming, threats, accusations, and suddenly I was at the center of a storm I never signed up for. My name is Zariah, I'm 32, and honestly I feel like my entire brain has been put through a blender these past few months. When I met Hope, she wasn't the type of person who demanded space in a room. She talked softly, like every word passed through a filter before leaving her mouth. Kind of poetic, kind of gentle, and somehow comforting. I fell for that hard. I'd been in loud, chaotic relationships before, so someone who didn't bark their feelings at me felt like a relief. Things between us were stable for the first few months. We cooked together a lot. She'd dance around the kitchen when she thought I wasn't looking. We'd watch old movies and finish each other's dumb jokes. She had this talent for making the most boring conversation feel like a moment. She could ask, "How was your day?" and make it sound like a love letter. But there was always something underneath. This tension that hovered like humidity. I kept telling myself I was imagining it. It started small. She'd make comments that felt harmless at first. I never had to budget with my ex. He just handled everything. Or she'd sigh dramatically and say, "You know, some men think showing love means taking care of the financial stress." Always said with that gentle tone, like she wasn't talking about me, but she absolutely was talking about me. Like she was laying bait and watching how I reacted. I brushed it off. Everyone has history. Everyone has an opinion. But her cracks weren't cracks. They were drafts warning me of a storm. One night after dinner, everything changed. We were sitting on the couch. She set her phone down, and a notification lit up her screen. I didn't snoop. It literally just flashed right in front of me, and I saw the name, Alfred. She noticed. She exhaled through her nose, annoyed, like I was the one who did something wrong. She said, "It's nothing romantic. We talk sometimes. Real casual. Way too casual." Then she added, like she was telling me what she ordered for lunch, "He sends me money every month. It's compensation." I remember just staring at her, like my brain refused to process the sentence. I asked her, "Compensation for what?" She shrugged. "For everything I went through while we were together. He knows what he put me through. It's fair." Her tone didn't even wobble. No shame. No hesitation. Like everyone gets monthly payouts from an ex. I asked her how long this had been going on. She said, "Almost 2 years." Then she added, "And no, Campbell doesn't know." She wouldn't get it. Campbell, Alfred's current partner. My jaw literally locked. Her phone buzzed again. She rolled her eyes like the universe was bothering her personally. "He's being dramatic," she muttered. She went into the kitchen to rinse plates. She left her phone unlocked. I'm not proud of what I did, but I'm human, not a statue. I looked, just one look, enough to see a message from Alfred. "Campbell is checking the accounts. She's suspicious. I can't keep sending this. We're arguing nonstop. I don't want this to destroy my relationship." And Hope had replied, "We had an agreement. Don't even start with this. You owe me." She didn't ask. She demanded. My stomach fell into my shoes. Not because of the money. Adults can handle their finances however they want, but because of her tone. It was like she believed she owned him, like she was entitled to his wallet, his guilt, his relationship problems. I didn't blow up. I didn't scream. I didn't accuse her. I just said, "It sounds like he's stressed." She didn't even pause washing the dishes. She just said, "He'll be fine. He knows better than to go back on his word." Something in me froze. The way she said it, cold, controlled, almost threatening. I barely slept for days. My mind kept replaying everything she said, every comment, every suggestion about money. Every second suddenly made sense in the worst way. I talked to my cousin, not the Campbell in the messages, just my cousin with the same name. I didn't name names. I didn't describe Hope or Alfred or anything identifying. I just laid out the situation. My cousin said, "People deserve the truth when it affects their life. But once you expose something, it's out there forever. No rewinding." And I sat with that for days, weeks, until the guilt of doing nothing felt heavier than the guilt of blowing everything up. So I finally did something. I emailed Campbell, Alfred's partner. I didn't go dramatic. No essay. No emotional paragraphs. Just, "I'm not sure what you do or don't know, but funds have been going out of your household every month because of an arrangement with someone else. You deserve to be aware." Attached the screenshots. Only the ones Hope allowed me to see, nothing beyond that. I didn't hide behind a burner email. Didn't fake my identity. I stood behind my name. Then silence. 2 weeks of absolute quiet. Hope acted normal, like a snake sunning itself on a rock, completely unaware anyone was about to step on it. Then everything went to hell so fast it felt like the floor dropped out from under me. Hope came home one night shaking with rage. Not crying, not arguing, yelling. I mean full-blown screaming like a kettle left on the stove. "You ruined everything," she shouted the second she walked in. "Do you think you're some kind of hero? Who do you think you are?" I yelled back. I'm not proud of it, but I'm not a doormat. I said, if telling the truth ruins your life, maybe your life needed ruining. She got in my face, like 3 inches away, and spat. You jealous, broke nobody. You never gave me anything. You never could give me anything. I snapped. Oh please, miss monthly donations. You're not a partner. You're a subscription service. At least I don't need my ex to pay my bills. She shoved my shoulder hard. I shoved back. We both yelled so loud the neighbors banged on the wall. Hope stormed around the room knocking things over, hissing like I personally burned down her childhood home. And then she screamed something that made my blood boil. You had no right to interfere with my arrangement. I yelled back. I had every right when you dragged me into your secret without my consent and expected me to keep it quiet. She called me unstable. I called her manipulative. She screamed I was pathetic. I said she was a parasite. She told me I ruined her life. I said, good, maybe now you'll stop ruining other people's. I thought that was the end. It wasn't, because the next day, Alfred showed up. And so did Campbell. And if I thought the yelling was bad before, it was nothing compared to what happened next. I was at work when my phone started vibrating like crazy, nonstop. I picked it up, and the moment I heard Hope's voice, I froze. It wasn't just upset, it was raw, panic, almost unrecognizable. Zariah, she gasped, voice cracking. They know everything. They know everything. I forced my voice to stay calm. I didn't want to escalate her panic, at least not on the phone. What happened? I asked. Campbell, she messaged me, Hope said, barely able to breathe. She had screenshots. Every single message. Alfred confessed. They had this huge blowout. Everything's out. I don't even know how to explain it. My stomach twisted. My mind was spinning. I could hear the chaos in her voice. Then she whispered, almost avoiding the words. She asked me why I thought I was entitled to their money. Her breathing was jagged. I could hear the sharp inhale and exhale between her words, like she'd been crying and screaming at the same time. Then, in a barely audible voice, trembling, was it you? Yes, I said, and it felt like my throat had frozen mid-sentence. I wasn't lying, but I could feel her anger already forming across the miles. Silence. Not just a pause, but the kind of silence that makes your chest tighten, where you know the words hanging in the air are dangerous. Then she said it, the coldest, smallest voice I've ever heard from her. You ruined everything. And then she hung up. I sat there at my desk, staring at the phone, the office noise suddenly unbearable. My colleagues glanced over. I could feel my face heating up, the anger and disbelief battling inside me. I wanted to yell, to throw my chair, to scream at someone, anyone, but I stayed. Later that night, she sent a text, a long one, not explosive, not rageful, just exhausted. You should have talked to me instead of blindsiding me. I'm disappointed, and I'm hurt. I read it over and over. My hands shook, my chest ached, and I realized, no matter how calm I had tried to be, the storm was only beginning. The next morning, another text. I need space. Please don't contact me. That was it. Dead silence after that. But things didn't stay quiet. Within hours, I got a flood of messages from Alfred. Rage, accusations, insults. You psycho. One text screamed, how dare you interfere in my life? You have no right. I laughed bitterly, out loud, in my empty apartment. Psycho, I muttered. You're the one playing puppet master with money behind everyone's back. Then I started replying, typing furiously. Oh, I'm the psycho? The person who finally told your partner that you've been quietly giving money to someone else for years? That's me, apparently. Not the person stealing money behind a partner's back for 2 freaking years. Alfred didn't back down. You think you're better than me? You think you're moral? He typed. You're a meddling, nosy little. I cut him off, typing faster than my anger could even think. Nosy? No. I'm the person who didn't watch my friend get played, who didn't let someone get scammed emotionally and financially. If that makes me nosy, congratulations. You've officially failed at human decency. Then the email started. Campbell, Alfred's partner, was furious, calling me reckless, manipulative, and selfish. She didn't hold back. You've ruined trust between people who didn't deserve it, she wrote. You think this is helping anyone? You're disgusting, Zariah. And I blew up. I haven't yelled at anyone like this in years, but I typed every word in caps. Disgusting? You think this is disgusting? Let me remind you, he's been giving money secretly to someone else for years. You want to act like I'm the villain here. I am the person standing up while everyone else ignored what was happening. I am not disgusting. You are. If anyone's disgusting, it's the people who let betrayal fester in silence. The texts were coming so fast, my fingers were flying over the keyboard. Hope texted again, and I could hear her panic through every word. I can't believe you did this, she typed. Do you even understand what you've done? I understand perfectly, I fired back. I understand that you lied to someone, that you allowed someone else to manipulate money and guilt over years. And I understand that someone had to step in because no one else had the guts to do it. You're angry at me? Good. Be angry, but don't call me the problem. Then the yelling escalated. Alfred called me, screaming. Hope was texting insults at every minute. Campbell, apparently, had called a mutual friend to complain. Everyone was dragging me into this mess. I wasn't even sure anymore who was yelling at me directly and who was yelling through the grapevine. And for the first time, I yelled back into the phone. I was pacing my apartment, hands flailing. You think your anger changes anything? That you can scream at me and make this okay? No, you're screaming because the truth hurts. You're screaming because you've been caught not lying. You're screaming because you let someone use money and guilt as a weapon and no one else had the courage to intervene. There were tears. There was shouting. My neighbors probably thought someone was being murdered, and I didn't care. I couldn't. Hope finally called me back later that night, voice trembling. Raw, you don't get it, Zariah. You don't get how much you hurt everyone, she said. Oh, I get it, I yelled. I get that you're mad that someone finally saw through your calm, polite facade and called out your manipulation. I get that you're mad I wasn't intimidated by your soft voice. I get it. And she screamed back. I swear the walls shook. You think you're right? You think you're better than everyone else? Yes, I am better than everyone who let this happen. Better than Alfred for hiding it. Better than you for lying about it. Better than Campbell for acting like the victim after years of betrayal. And it just kept going. Texts, calls, insults, accusations, back and forth. Every word was venomous, raw, full of everything bottled up for months. By the end of the night, my voice was hoarse. My head was spinning. My heart felt like it had been punched repeatedly. And still, there was no resolution. No one backing down. No apologies. Only yelling. Only rage. Only the sharp edges of betrayal slicing at every connection I had with these people. 3 weeks later, my phone rang. It was Hope. Her voice was quieter than before, but heavier, as if the weight of everything that had happened was pressing down on her. I've been thinking a lot, she said, about what I did, about what you did. About everything. I could hear the hesitance in her words, the guilt and the shame. But beneath that, there was tension, the kind that makes your chest tighten because you know she's holding back anger, even if she's trying to calm herself. She told me about a long conversation she had with Alfred. Apparently, he admitted he had felt pressured but never spoke up. He felt guilty, trapped between hurting his partner and disappointing Hope. He apologized to Campbell, she said softly. They're trying to work through it. Her words should have been a relief, but they weren't. Instead, they opened another wound. Then she said something that caught me off guard. I wasn't trying to take advantage, she said. I don't know what I thought. I convinced myself it was owed to me. I didn't realize how far it went. She sounded ashamed, confused, embarrassed, and even though she was trying to explain, I could feel the tension crackle like static through the phone line. I wish you'd talk to me, she said, but maybe I wouldn't have listened. Maybe I needed the shock. I miss you, Zariah, she added. And for the first time, her voice sounded small, almost fragile. I tried to stay calm, but my own frustration bubbled up. Weeks of texts, calls, screaming, being insulted, being accused, and here she was, talking like I was just a bad cop in a story I didn't choose. I wanted to yell, to remind her of all the hours I had spent listening to her excuses, reading the rage-filled messages from Alfred, defending myself from Campbell's attacks. I didn't. I clenched my fists, my knuckles white, and listened. We decided to meet in person a few days later, not to reconcile, not to forgive each other, just to talk. From the moment I walked in, I could feel the tension. Every word was loaded. Every look was a potential argument waiting to erupt. Zariah, she said quietly, I stopped taking money from Alfred immediately. I'm trying to understand why I equated financial reassurance with emotional closure. Her voice cracked at the last part. I wanted to say, finally, but instead I stayed silent. She continued, I don't hate you anymore. I just wish things were different. And then came the part one had been bracing for. I don't think we should get back together. Not now. Maybe not ever. There's too much broken between us. I'm not ready to rebuild anything. I nodded. I agreed. But inside, my mind was a hurricane of anger, disbelief, and residual tension from the past weeks. I wanted to scream at her, to tell her how ridiculous it was that she thought she could just casually unload her guilt without acknowledging the chaos it had caused. You think a simple apology fixes months of chaos? I finally said, voice raised. Do you think Alfred's screaming at me, Campbell's accusing me, and all the people involved just magically stop because you finally decided to stop taking money? You think your little moral awakening erases the fact that I had to face them, deal with their insults, their threats, their calls every day for weeks? Her eyes widened. I didn't realize. No, didn't realize me. I yelled. I didn't realize someone was manipulating money for years behind someone else's back. I didn't realize I'd have to defend myself from a man screaming at me like I'm some kind of criminal. I didn't realize Campbell would call me every name under the sun for doing what any decent human would do. She flinched. I could see her shrinking back, but I wasn't done. And don't think I haven't heard it all, Hope. The texts, the calls, the you're disgusting, the you're meddling, the you're psycho. Guess what? I'm none of those things. I'm the only person who actually did anything. Do you think I cared about your fragile ego while people were screaming at me? No, I was trying to protect everyone from your lies. Tears streamed down her face. I could see her trying not to cry, to defend herself, but the tension was thick enough to choke on. I know, she whispered. I didn't mean. You didn't mean? I yelled. You didn't mean? How many times do you get to hide behind? I didn't mean after weeks of hiding, lying, and manipulating through money. Do you hear yourself? You ruined trust. trust. You manipulated feelings. And now you say you didn't mean to? Her voice broke completely. Zariah, I'm sorry. I didn't realize. I slammed my hands on the table. Sorry doesn't cut it. Sorry doesn't fix the screaming, the chaos, the calls, the insults hurled at me, the people who looked at me like I was the villain when I was trying to tell the truth. We sat in silence after that. Not comfortable silence. Not peace. Just the kind of heavy silence that hangs in the air after words that can't be unsaid. I wanted to yell more. I wanted to call every hypocrite who had insulted me, who had screamed at me, who had dragged me through this mess, and tell them how wrong they were. But I didn't. I couldn't. My throat was raw. My voice was hoarse. My mind exhausted. After weeks of silence, the tension finally started to ease. I stayed away from Hope, Campbell, and Alfred, giving myself room to breathe and process everything that had happened. No messages, no confrontations, just time to focus on myself. During that period, it hit me how much I had actually done the right thing. I hadn't lied, I hadn't cheated, and I hadn't caused the problems that had exploded around me. All the insults, the yelling, the accusations, they weren't mine to carry. Slowly, I started to feel lighter, like the weight of everyone else's drama was finally off my shoulders. Then, unexpectedly, Campbell reached out. I braced myself, expecting anger or harsh words, but instead the message read, Zariah, I owe you an apology. I had no idea what was really going on, and I can see now that you were only trying to be honest. I hope you're doing well. I stared at it for a while. No guilt, no tension, just a recognition that I had acted with integrity. And in that moment, it felt like a small victory. Hope got in touch too, cautiously. Her words were simple, but sincere. I'm working through a lot. I'm sorry for the way everything went down. I hope you're okay. I didn't respond immediately. I didn't have to. I had closure just by knowing the truth was out there, and that people were dealing with it. A few days later, I hung out with friends I hadn't seen in months. We laughed until our sides hurt. We talked about normal things, ridiculous things, things that didn't involve betrayal or secrets. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I actually felt happy again. Even Alfred and Hope tried to reach me after that, probably hoping I'd cave or get upset, but I didn't. I didn't feel the need to explain myself or defend my choices. I had acted honestly. I had done what was right, and that alone was enough. Most importantly, I finally felt proud of myself. Proud that I didn't buckle under the pressure. Proud that I didn't let insults or screaming dictate my actions. Proud that I had handled a messy, chaotic situation with honesty and courage. For the first time in months, I felt a sense of calm and accomplishment. The end. All right, let's break this down slowly. No rushing, no overthinking. When people come to this sub asking AITA, they usually assume they did something huge or dramatic. But in your situation, nothing you did crosses that line. You didn't explode. You didn't sabotage anything. You didn't treat anyone unfairly. You reacted like a person who suddenly felt pressure, confusion, or mixed intentions. And that's the kind of moment where anyone would step back to make sense of things. A lot of AITA stories involve people ignoring their instincts. You didn't. You saw the situation shifting, you felt the tension building, and instead of pretending everything was fine, you protected your space and your peace. That's not selfish, that's responsible. The people who get labeled TA on AITA are usually the ones who double down, refuse to communicate, or push others into corners. You didn't do that. Your actions were steady, grounded, and respectful to what you needed in that moment. That's why, if this was posted on AITA, the judgment would be pretty straightforward. NTA. You didn't harm anyone. You just refused to get swept into something you weren't ready for. So if your question is AITA, the answer is no, not even close. You made a boundary call, and in any real AITA thread, that would land firmly on the not the asshole side every time. Before we jump into the next story, don't forget to like and subscribe, and let us know your favorite part in the comments. AITA for saying no after my parents tried to force me to give up my apartment? My family tried to make me give my apartment to my brother for his wedding. 10 years of work, every sacrifice I made, it all came down to this. They called me selfish, cruel, ungrateful, and I almost lost my home to them. Here's what happened when I finally said no. Hi, everyone. I never thought I'd be posting about something like this, but I really need perspective. I'm 31, my name's Aries, and I've spent the last decade working in finance to finally secure my own place. It's nothing extravagant, just a 2-bedroom apartment, but it's mine, and I love it. I saved for years, skipped vacations, worked side jobs, and even took pay cuts just to make it happen. Everything I've done, every late night, and every skipped outing was to secure this space. It's not just an apartment to me. It's proof I could build my life on my own terms, and now it feels like it's under attack. My younger brother, Santos, is 27. He's a freelance videographer. Talented, sure, but inconsistent. About 5 months ago, he got engaged to Amy, a sweet woman who seems lovely in person, but since the engagement, her influence on my family has been been, well, suffocating. Here's the situation. My parents invited me over for what I assumed would be a casual Sunday dinner. The four of us, Mom, Dad, Santos, and Amy, sat around their dining table, eating quietly. I was tired from work, mentally bracing myself for a normal, uneventful evening. But as soon as dessert was cleared, my dad leaned forward. That's serious. I'm about to lecture. Look on his face. Aries, he said, slowly, deliberately. We've been thinking about Santos' wedding gift. We think it would be meaningful if you transferred ownership of your apartment to him. I froze. My apartment, my home, my sanctuary, the place I'd poured everything into. My parents smiled at me as if they expected a simple, sure, no problem, and I just stared at them, speechless. Aries, Mom said softly, trying to sound comforting, but failing entirely. It's just a couple of years. You can find another place. This will give Santos and Amy a solid start for their married life. Santos smiled nervously, like he was trying to be persuasive without really wanting to be. Amy nodded politely. It would really help us, she whispered. I couldn't even respond. I felt dizzy, like someone had punched the air out of me. I mumbled that I needed time, but even saying that made them all look disappointed, as if I were a spoiled child instead of the person who had built something real with my own hands. That evening, the text started. Mom called me selfish. Dad sent links about family duty and supporting siblings. Santos sent a heartbroken, I just wanted my big brother to be happy for us. And Amy pinged me on Facebook with, I'm sorry if we made you uncomfortable. We just wanted your love and support. I haven't slept properly in a week. Every time I open the apartment door, I feel like I'm betraying my family just by existing there. And it got worse the next day. My parents started bombarding me with messages on every platform. WhatsApp, Messenger, texts. I had to mute all of them eventually just to breathe. The messages weren't subtle. They were passive-aggressive, judgmental, and manipulative. Photos of Santos and Amy's wedding planning popped up constantly. The florist, the venue, the cake, with captions like, imagine if Aries helped, this would be easier. Then came the yelling. First, it was a call from Mom. Aries, you are so selfish. How can you not see that this is about family? How can you sit there thinking only about yourself? I snapped. I couldn't hold back anymore. Selfish? Selfish is expecting someone to give up everything they've worked for because you think it's convenient for your other child. Selfish is thinking I owe Santos my life and my savings just because I exist in the same family. There was silence on the line for a second, then more yelling. Mom screamed about family honor, how I was ruining everything, how I was ungrateful. I yelled back, telling her that she was manipulative, that Dad was just as bad, that their constant guilt trips had been ruining my life since I was a kid. Dad called next. Aries, this isn't about manipulation. This is about what's right for your brother, he roared. What's right for my brother? I shouted back. Right now, what's right is that you all want to strip me of my home. That's right. You think I should just hand over my life for him and smile while you all nod approvingly? I am not your bank. I am not your tool. I am not Santos' safety net. Santos called later. I could hear the tension in his voice. Aries, please, don't make this harder. Mom and Dad, don't talk about them like I don't know exactly who's pressuring you. I shouted. I know they've been twisting your mind into thinking this is normal, that I'm supposed to just hand over what's mine. But I'm not doing it, Santos. I am not giving up my life for your convenience. Amy texted while I was still fuming. She tried to be nice. Aries, maybe we can find a compromise? I sent back. There is no compromise where you take what's mine. Stop trying to guilt me with your sweet voice and your polite nods. I'm not a charity. The next few days were hell. Every message I got from my family was a mixture of fake concern and thinly veiled insult. Mom called me cold. Dad said I was ungrateful. Santos cried in text that I didn't love them enough. I screamed at my phone. I threw a chair once. I banged my head against the wall in frustration. I couldn't believe this was happening over an apartment. One evening, Dad came over to talk in person, and I was seething. He walked in with that smug, self-righteous look. Aries, I just want you to understand the value of family, he said. I exploded. The value of family? You've spent my whole life comparing me to Santos, guilt-tripping me, making me feel small, and now you want to strip me of my apartment for his wedding? You're delusional. Mom tried to intervene, saying, please, Aries, don't yell. I yelled over her. Don't tell me not to yell. I've been quiet for years while you insulted me, belittled me, and treated me like I'm less than. Now you want me to just surrender everything I've worked for. They both went silent. Santos and Amy were silent too, just watching. I could feel the tension crackling like electricity. I wanted to storm out, but I stayed, yelling until my throat hurt, my ears rang, and my head felt ready to split. I wanted them to understand, to really get it, but I knew they wouldn't. Even after that night, the messages didn't stop. WhatsApp notifications kept buzzing with more guilt, more hints, more passive-aggressive digs. I called them out in texts. I told them they were manipulative, selfish, and cruel for expecting me to bend my life around someone else's wedding. I told Santos he wasn't my child. I wasn't obligated to give him my apartment. I told Amy to stop using sweetness and charm to try to manipulate isolate me. It's exhausting. I feel cornered every time my phone buzzes. I feel like no matter what I do, I'm wrong. I'm angry, I'm hurt, I'm livid, and I'm completely drained. I can't believe that wanting to keep my home has become a war zone, a moral battleground, and a personal insult. And here I am, sitting in my apartment, trying not to break down again, wondering if anyone out there would even understand why this feels like a violation, not just a disagreement. 2 weeks later, things escalated in a way I didn't think was even possible. My phone was constantly buzzing. WhatsApp, Facebook, texts, Messenger, all with one purpose: to wear me down. My parents started sending photos almost daily of Santos and Amy's wedding plans. The venue, the flowers, the seating charts, even little things like napkin designs and cake tiers. Every photo came with captions dripping guilt. Things like, "This could all be easier if Aries helped," or "We know you care. You can make this right." One afternoon, I opened a long Facebook message from Mom. It was exhausting just reading it. "Aries, we've raised you to be generous. This isn't about money. It's about family. Don't you want to see Santos start life without debt? Think of your role in our family. You're his brother. You should care more than this." I felt a familiar burn in my chest. My jaw tightened. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, and I typed something sharp back, but then erased it. I wasn't ready. Later that evening, Santos texted, "Aries, I don't want to fight with you. I love you. Can we talk?" I sighed. Against my better judgment, I agreed to a phone call. Maybe I could set boundaries, I thought. I shouldn't have. The call started calmly enough. Santos sounded hesitant, anxious, but within 2 minutes, the guilt bombardment began. "I don't want to take your home from you," he said, voice cracking, "but Mom and Dad really think it's the right thing. I hate feeling like I'm disappointing them, and you too." I took a deep breath, trying to stay composed. "Santos, stop right there. You're not disappointing anyone by having boundaries, but you are letting them pressure you into this guilt trip, and I won't be a pawn." There was a pause. Then he started again. "Aries, it's just a couple of years. You've had your apartment for a while. Why can't you just let us?" I cut him off. "A couple of years? Are you serious? You're asking me to hand over the product of 10 years of my life, my savings, my late nights, and my sacrifices, and you call that a couple of years? Don't ever belittle my work like that." "I'm not belittling," he started, but I wasn't done. "You are. Every word you've said, every sweet little 'I love you' hiding a dagger, is belittling me. You think I'm the villain here? You think I'm wrong for wanting to keep what I earned? Wake up, Santos. This isn't about generosity. This is about you and Mom and Dad deciding my life is yours to take." I could hear him swallowing, muttering defensively. I thought it would be easier. I didn't think. I yelled back, louder than I meant to. "Easier for who? Easier for you. Easier for Amy. I am not your charity case. I am not your golden ticket. I worked for this. I sacrificed for this. And now you all have the audacity to act like I'm the bad guy." He got louder too, panic and guilt making his voice break. "I didn't mean, don't talk to me like that. Don't tell me you didn't mean it. You've been saying exactly what you meant. Your parents told you I should just hand over my apartment, and you agreed. And now you're crying to me about feelings? Feelings don't pay rent, Santos." The call went on for over an hour. Every time I tried to explain why I couldn't give up my apartment, every time I tried to make them understand the pressure they were putting on me, the guilt came back, harder. I couldn't breathe at points. I screamed. He screamed. We both yelled, shouting over one another, talking past each other in a loop of anger and hurt. I called him out on everything. "You don't get it, Santos. You and Amy think I exist to make your life easier. That's what you think. That's what Mom and Dad think. They've spent my life comparing me to you, telling me I'm selfish, cold, ungrateful, all the while pushing you to be this golden child. And now you're acting like this is normal behavior. You're acting like I owe you my life." He yelled back, saying I was cruel, that I was mean, that I was making everything about me. And I yelled back harder. "Cruel? Mean? Try living 10 years under their constant judgment, under their manipulation. Try being blamed for everything while everyone else gets a free pass. And then tell me about cruelty." By the end of the call, I was shaking. My throat hurt. My hands were numb from gripping the phone too tightly. Santos was silent for a long stretch, probably realizing he couldn't argue further without breaking. The next morning, my phone exploded. 17 WhatsApp messages from my parents, Santos, and Amy. Disappointment, sadness, frustration, subtle digs, and outright guilt, all in a chaotic mix. They accused me of being heartless, ungrateful, uncaring, selfish, cruel, manipulative, unloving, immature, and impossible. I muted everything for 2 full days just to survive. The silence was deafening, but also a relief. Still, inside, my chest felt heavy. Every message they had sent lingered in in my mind. Every word of criticism, every accusation, every passive-aggressive, "we just want your support," stuck like a thorn. And even muted, I could feel the tension stretching between us like a taut wire, ready to snap the moment I unmuted. I knew that when I did, the yelling, the insults, the guilt trips, everything would start all over again. I'm sitting here, trying not to think about my phone, trying not to think about the apartment being at the center of this storm, trying not to feel like I'm slowly losing myself to a family that refuses to respect boundaries. About a month later, the situation had taken on a life of its own. My phone barely stopped buzzing. Every day felt like walking through a minefield. It started with a WhatsApp message from Amy. "Aries, I know you don't want to help us with the apartment, but we're in trouble. Can you at least give advice? We don't know how to budget with all this wedding debt." I felt a flicker of concern. Part of me genuinely didn't want them to drown in financial chaos. Against my instinct to retreat, I agreed to help. What followed quickly became exhausting. We started WhatsApp video calls once a week. I downloaded budgeting apps for them, walked them through debt management strategies, explained how to track expenses, create a plan, and save for the future. Amy caught on fast. She was organized and asked questions, actually listening, taking notes. But Santos was a nightmare. He'd start taking notes, get distracted, forget to track expenses, and then guilt trip me when I corrected him. "You're making it too hard," he complained one call, flopping on the couch, face red. "I just wanted you to help without nagging." I snapped. "Nagging? You call me nagging when I'm trying to prevent you from sinking further into debt? You call me a nag for teaching you to manage your life? You're unbelievable." He rolled his eyes and muttered something under his breath. I didn't let it go. "Excuse me? Did you just mutter something disrespectful while I'm trying to help you not go bankrupt? Say that again." He started to raise his voice. "You think you're better than me, don't you? Oh, I know I worked my ass off for 10 years to have what I have. I sacrificed. I endured. I busted my butt for every cent. And now you and Amy and my parents expect me to hand it over to you like it's nothing? You don't get to accuse me of arrogance or selfishness when you're the ones acting entitled." The line went silent for a moment, Santos breathing heavily, probably realizing he'd crossed a line. Meanwhile, my parents were not letting up. They started posting photos on Facebook from wedding planning events and tagging me in them. Every post was a carefully disguised guilt trip. "So excited for the wedding. Can't wait to see our family fully together. We're making progress. Wish Aries could be part of it." I muted notifications, but still saw the little red numbers every time I opened the app. Each one felt like a punch in the gut. Then came the call from Mom. She rang unexpectedly, and I answered cautiously. "Aries, why are you being so distant? Why aren't you contributing enough?" she asked, voice sharp. I took a breath, trying to stay calm. "Mom, I am helping in the ways I can. I'm teaching Santos and Amy how to manage their finances, showing them budgeting strategies. But giving up my apartment is impossible. That's not reasonable, and you know it. You're being selfish," she hissed. "You're ruining everything. You're supposed to be family." I lost it. Selfish. Ruining everything. I'm the one under constant pressure, constantly guilt tripped, constantly accused of being heartless. I am not destroying your wedding plans. I am not stealing their happiness. I'm protecting what I've built for myself. How dare you twist this into me being selfish?" She hung up, slamming the phone down with a quiet click. But the damage was done. My heart was racing. My hands were shaking. I could still hear her voice, venomous, in my head. Then, as if coordinated, Santos called later. "Aries, they're upset with me. Mom says you're ruining everything. I don't want to fight with you." I let out a bark of laughter, bitter and angry. "Ruining everything? You mean my life? You mean 10 years of work, 10 years of sacrifices, 10 years of making responsible choices that you all get to treat like they're disposable?" He stammered. I didn't mean, I don't care what you meant." I yelled. "You, Amy, and my parents have spent weeks acting like I owe you my life, like I exist to make your wedding easier. You insult me with your texts, your posts, your words, and now you come crying about feelings? You're unbelievable." He shouted back, blaming me for being cold, for refusing to understand, for ruining their happiness. I shouted over him, pointing out every entitlement, every insult, every passive-aggressive attack they had thrown at me over the last month. "You're manipulative," I screamed. "You think a guilt trip is a conversation? You think saying, 'we're upset,' lets you dictate my life? Wake up. I am not your property. I am not your pawn. I am not a bank you get to raid." And Mom's been twisting this into a moral crusade, making me feel like a villain for having boundaries. I will not be shamed for surviving. We hung up hours later, both of us exhausted and breathing heavily. My throat hurt, my head ached, and my stomach felt like I'd been punched repeatedly. But even in that exhaustion, I realized something. The line had to be clear. I would help Santos and Amy with advice, guidance, budgeting, and moral support if I chose, but the apartment, my home, was untouchable. Yet I could feel it simmering, the tension, the resentment, the family pressure. I knew the next confrontation would be worse. The insults, the guilt, the screaming, it was far from over. And deep down, I could feel my patience fraying. I could feel my anger growing. I was ready to fight, to yell, to defend myself against anyone who tried to claim I was heartless, selfish, or ungrateful. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Things came to a head about 3 months after the original dinner. The constant messages, the guilt trips, the veiled insults, the screaming matches. It all boiled over one Thursday night. I was exhausted, mentally and emotionally, from a month of WhatsApp calls, endless posts, and nonstop pressure from my parents, Santos, and Amy. I had muted most notifications, but my phone kept lighting up. Every ping made my chest tighten. It started with a call from Santos. Panicked and almost breathless. Aries, Amy and I were drowning. We overspent. The wedding, the honeymoon. We can't keep up. I don't want to ask, but I felt the old flicker of concern, but it was immediately overridden by anger and disbelief. You've spent months guilt-tripping me, shoving me into feeling like a villain, and now you're begging? I took a deep breath. Santos, stop right there. Let me make one thing crystal clear. I am not giving you my apartment. Ever. Not now. Not in 2 months. Not ever. That is non-negotiable. There was silence on the line. I could almost hear him trying to breathe through it. You don't understand, he said finally, voice cracking. Mom and Dad, they said. I cut him off, voice sharp. I understand perfectly. They think they can manipulate me, pressure me, shame me into giving up my life. They think I'll cave because I'm supposed to love family more than I value myself. Newsflash, that ends tonight. No more guilt, no more manipulation. I've spent months helping you manage your finances. I've shown you budgeting apps. I've walked you through debt. I've given you advice for free, and I've done more than anyone else in this family has for themselves. You will not make me a victim of your irresponsibility. Santos stammered. I don't know what to say. I'll tell you what to say. I snapped. You apologize for treating me like my life, my home, my work is nothing. You apologize for every text, every post, every passive-aggressive guilt trip. And you start taking responsibility for your life instead of trying to force me to bail you out. Do you hear me? Amy jumped in, her voice frantic over speaker. Aries, we didn't mean to. I didn't let her finish. Didn't mean to? Didn't mean to manipulate me, guilt me, insult me, and pressure me to hand over everything I've built? That's not an accident. That's a choice. And the choice I make is to keep my life intact. You're not entitled to my sacrifices. My apartment is off limits. Capiche? There was a long, stunned silence. Then Santos whispered, Okay, we get it. I could hear the tension shift. For the first time in months, they realized I wasn't going to budge, wasn't going to be bullied. I didn't yell anymore. I didn't plead. I didn't explain. I enforced boundaries, and they had no choice but to respect it. The very next day, I received the first text from Amy that felt different. Aries, we started downsizing some plans and reworking the budget. I understand now. Thank you for sticking to your boundaries. Santos texted a little later. Aries, I've started taking my expenses seriously. No more excuses. I'm sorry for everything I said and did. You were right. I felt a strange mix of relief and satisfaction. Months of emotional pressure, months of family drama, months of guilt trips. Finally, they were taking responsibility. Even my parents reached out cautiously. Mom called first. Aries, we may have been too hard on you, she admitted, voice quieter than I've ever heard. We just wanted to help. I cut her off politely, but firmly. Mom, Dad, I am not giving up my life for anyone. I love you, but that doesn't mean I will sacrifice myself to make you or Santos or Amy feel comfortable. I've helped where I can, and that's enough. The end. The whole situation you were pulled into was already tense long before you said anything. There were unspoken expectations, private decisions, and people trying to manage the outcome without actually communicating. That's the kind of environment where even a calm, honest response feels disruptive, not because you did something wrong, but because the truth interrupts whatever narrative someone else was trying to maintain. Campbell was overwhelmed, Alfred was holding back key details, and Hope was reacting emotionally to things she didn't want to acknowledge. You weren't the one creating the conflict. You were the only person not hiding anything. When everyone else is trying to steer the moment in their own direction, the person who stays straightforward often gets labeled as the problem. But that doesn't make it true. Your role wasn't to protect someone's version of the story or soften the reality. Your role was simply to be clear, steady, and honest. You didn't raise your voice, you didn't escalate the tension, and you didn't push anyone toward a decision. You responded with clarity when there was confusion, and you didn't pretend to support a story that didn't match what was actually happening. That's not interference. That's integrity. If someone feels exposed by your honesty, that's about their choices, not your behavior. You didn't betray anyone. You didn't manipulate anything, and you didn't cause the fallout. You just refused to carry someone else's mess or act like you didn't see what was right in front of you. So when it comes to AITA, the answer is clear and steady. You are not the AITA. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Share your own story and let us know your favorite part in the comments.